More than one. 9 billion adults on this planet are currently overweight, and over 650 million of them are classified as obese. That number has climbed 2.5 times since 1975. Somewhere inside that number is a multi-billion-dollar industry promising a fix, and one of its fastest-growing corners is not a drug, a diet plan, or a gym membership. It is a capsule sitting on a shelf right next to the yogurt. Probiotics. Live bacteria sold in a bottle, marketed for digestion, for immunity, and increasingly for weight loss itself. Have you ever picked one up, read the label, and wondered whether any of it was backed by real evidence, or just a clever marketing story built on a kernel of real science? The word probiotic did not even exist in scientific literature until 1974. Researchers coined it that year to describe live microorganisms that could genuinely benefit whoever consumed them. The idea itself is much older and messier than that date suggests. Fermented foods, yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, had been linked to health and long life for centuries, mostly through observation and folklore rather than controlled experiments. It took most of the 20th century for that folk wisdom to turn into an actual field of microbiology, built around a strange idea that took a while to earn respect. Your gut is not sterile. It is packed with trillions of living organisms. By some estimates, the bacteria living in and on the human body roughly match the number of your own human cells. You are, in a very literal sense, carrying around an entire ecosystem everywhere you go. So here is a question worth asking. If that ecosystem can shape digestion and immunity, could it also be quietly shaping something as fundamental as how much fat your body decides to hold onto? That question got a lot more serious once scientists started comparing the gut bacteria of lean and obese lab mice side by side. Certain bacterial groups turned up more often in the obese mice, and when researchers transferred that same bacteria into germ-free mice that had no gut microbiome of their own, some of those mice gained more weight too, on the exact same diet. That single line of research is a big part of why probiotics quietly moved from a digestive health supplement into something nutritionists began prescribing specifically for weight loss. But mice are not people, and the gap between a mouse cage and a human gut turns out to be bigger than it sounds. One detail buried in the research is almost funny once you notice it. A strain called Lactobacillus acidophilus stays stable inside a mouse's intestines for a long time, while a different strain, Bifidobacterium bifidum, barely survives in that same environment. If two bacterial strains behave that differently inside a mouse, a creature scientists can control almost completely, it says something about how much more that could vary from one human gut to the next. And weight itself is not simple to begin with. It sits at the crossroads of how much energy your body burns, how much food you eat, and a feedback system your brain runs almost entirely without asking your permission. So here's a question worth sitting with for a second. If your brain is already negotiating your hunger and your fat storage behind the scenes without ever consulting you, could swallowing a capsule of live bacteria each morning actually tilt that hidden negotiation? A huge piece of that hidden negotiation runs on hormones most people have never heard of. Leptin is one of them, a hormone made mostly by fat tissue itself, whose entire job is to tell your brain how much fat you are already storing. Scientists studying obese lab mice in the 1990s found that a mutation in the gene controlling leptin could cause extreme, uncontrollable overeating, on top of a whole cascade of other metabolic problems. There is another hormone working the opposite angle, called ghrelin, made mostly in your gut, that tells your brain it is time to eat by ramping up stomach activity and acid production. So somewhere between your gut and your brain, there is an entire chemical conversation happening about hunger and fat storage, almost none of which you consciously control, no matter how much willpower you think you are exercising. That is part of why obesity is so stubbornly hard to treat with diet advice alone, and why the last few years have brought an explosion of new anti-obesity drugs designed to act directly on that hunger signaling system. Some of the newest ones can cut body weight by more than 10% in a majority of the people who take them, numbers nutrition science had rarely seen before. But those drugs are new, expensive, and their long-term safety and cardiovascular effects are still being worked out in real time, essentially on the millions of people already taking them. Against that backdrop, a cheap bottle of probiotic capsules sitting quietly in the supplement aisle looks almost too good to be true. No prescription, no injections, no five-figure price tag, just bacteria you swallow with breakfast. Which raises the obvious question: does the actual clinical evidence support that promise? Or is this another supplement riding on a scientifically plausible story nobody has actually tested properly? A team of researchers decided to find out, the only way that actually settles anything, by pulling together every randomized controlled trial that had tested oral probiotics against a placebo, specifically in people with obesity. They searched 5 major databases: PubMed, Web of Science, EMBIS, the Cochrane Library, and CNKI, registering their protocol in advance so nobody could quietly change the rules partway through. The initial search turned up 381 records. After stripping out duplicates, 98 remained. Reading titles and abstracts trimmed that down to just 10 studies worth reading in full. Of those 10, 3 were excluded for signs of publication bias or real methodological flaws, leaving 7 randomized controlled trials that made the final cut. Between them, those 7 trials covered 412 adults with obesity, published between 2014 and 2020, testing strains like Lactobacillus, Bifidobacterium, and Bacillus against a placebo, most trials running somewhere between 2 months and 6 months. So after pooling everything those 7 trials actually measured, what did the data show about probiotics and weight? The headline result held up. People taking probiotics lost significantly more weight than the placebo group, about a kilogram more on average, and the 7 trials barely disagreed with each other at all. That kind of agreement between independent studies, run by different teams in different countries, is exactly what makes a result worth taking seriously. Waist circumference told a similar story. In the 5 trials that measured it, the probiotic groups shrank their waistlines significantly more than the placebo groups did. Visceral fat, the metabolically active fat packed around your internal organs rather than sitting just under the skin, dropped even more consistently across all 4 trials that tracked it, with almost no disagreement between them. That matters because visceral fat is one of the strongest known predictors of heart disease. In some studies, an even better predictor than body weight or BMI on its own. But then the data threw a curveball. Body mass index, the single number doctors use most often to define obesity in the first place, barely moved at all when the 7 trials were pooled together. 6 of the 7 trials tracked BMI, and combined, they showed no statistically significant difference between the probiotic group and the placebo group. The trials disagreed with each other heavily on this particular number though, and when researchers removed a single outlier trial from the analysis, the remaining data suddenly did show a significant drop in BMI. That swing from no measurable effect to a clear one, just by removing one study, is exactly the kind of instability that keeps a result unsettled rather than proven. Cholesterol fared even worse. Only 3 of the 7 trials measured LDL cholesterol at all. Those 3 disagreed with each other more than on any other outcome in the entire analysis. And combined, they showed no significant benefit from probiotics whatsoever. With that few trials contributing data, the researchers themselves warn against reading too much into that particular result, in either direction. Put together, the honest picture is a mixed one. Real, consistent effects on body weight, waist size, and visceral fat. No real effect on BMI or cholesterol, at least not yet, and not with any confidence. And the trials behind all of it are still small. 412 people spread across 7 separate studies works out to an average of roughly 30 participants per trial. Most run for somewhere between 8 weeks and 6 months. None of the 7 trials compared different bacterial strains directly against each other either, so nobody yet knows which specific probiotic, if any, deserves the credit. Every trial also layered the probiotic on top of a standard, calorie-controlled diet, which means what actually got measured is an add-on effect, not probiotics working entirely on their own. Because every one of those 7 studies was a randomized controlled trial rather than an observational one, the weight and waist findings sit on genuinely firmer ground than most nutrition headlines ever get to claim. Still, with only 7 modest-sized trials feeding the entire pooled result, and real disagreement on BMI and cholesterol, the researchers stopped well short of calling probiotics a standalone treatment for obesity. What they call for instead is more of exactly what got them this far: larger trials, longer follow-up, and head-to-head comparisons between different bacterial strains before anyone can responsibly turn this into medical advice. So the next time you walk past that shelf of probiotic capsules promising a slimmer waistline, the honest answer sits somewhere in between skepticism and hope. The early data is real. It is just not the whole story yet. This study, Effects of Oral Supplementation of Probiotics on Body Weight and Visceral Fat in Obese Patients, a meta-analysis and systematic review, was led by Guo and colleagues, and published in Scientific Reports in 2025.